Hi guys and girls, I'm Karel Segers here at the Story Department, and in this video I'm going to take a step back. I know in the previous video I talked about point of view. I showed you how questions anchor us in the perspective of that main character and therefore have a greater result, a greater emotional engagement. However, I forgot to mention something. I forgot to mention to make a distinction between two types of point of view, and I think that is essential in order to understand whatever will follow. Because I'm planning on doing a whole series on point of view. It is that important, but you really need to see this introduction before anything else makes sense. So let's go back to Robert McKee. Robert McKee, in his book Story, wrote an interesting quote. Here's the quote. "The more time spent with a character, the more opportunity to witness his choices. The result is more empathy and emotional involvement between audience and character." So what McKee says here is that we need to stay with the character, so the character needs to be in every scene. And so we need to witness what the character witnesses. That places us in their skin and that makes us feel what they feel. Makes sense, right? Well, he was right to a degree, because this theory was tried and tested, but from the wrong perspective. And we're going back to 1940s for this. Warner Brothers had a film called Lady in the Lake. It was the debut film for director Robert Montgomery, based on a novel by Raymond Chandler that was published about 5 years earlier. And Warner Brothers hoped that this film would revolutionize the way we were going to see cinema. How they did it? Well, they placed the camera in the position where the eyes of the main character were supposed to be. In this case, Philip Marlowe. Philip Marlowe is the star of the story, Lady in the Lake. And I'm going to show you a short clip so you understand what that looked like. And if you frown, then that is fully understandable. So you'll see a character speaking to Philip Marlowe, who is, in this case, us.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. You're a Yankee, you wouldn't understand. I don't think a little scheme is going to work. Pardon me, Mr. Marlowe, do you have the time?
What's the matter? Doesn't your clock work either?
Sadly, the little point of view scheme didn't work either, and the film did not revolutionize cinema as we know it. And Warner Brothers did not continue this technique. Now, why is this? McKee was right up to a degree. We need to have the character in the scene all the time, so we witness their choices, but there's something else essential about it. We need to see the character. We need to see the eyes of the main character in order to understand how they feel, and that's essential for engagement, involvement, empathy, and ultimately identification. So, what are we talking about here? We're talking about camera point of view. So the camera took the point of view of the character and didn't move from there. So camera point of view is still a technique that is used, and it is used effectively, and it's good that you know how it works and how you write it. I'll show you an example of camera point of view that was quite effective. I mean, Rear Window is a good example where we take the eyes of James Stewart's character and we look at the events. Here, Body Double, inspired by Hitchcock, does pretty much the same thing. And more recently, in Truman Show, same thing. So we have a camera point of view from the ring of Truman, from the mirror of Truman, and bins, all sorts of items contain cameras, and they allow to spy on Truman because his world is full of cameras and he's not aware of it. Now, these gimmicks or these cameras allow us to come closer to our character. This is not about taking the eye perspective. It's still camera point of view. It's still what we call camera point of view. And you have it often in thriller or in horror movies, in creature films. And the way you write this goes like this. So, camera point of view goes like this. So say that you have a creature movie, then you want a camera to take the creature point of view, and then you write in description, creature point of view, colon, we move towards Helen in this case, who is not aware of the danger approaching her. That's usually why we do it. It's called dramatic irony. We show something that the character doesn't know. So we shift point of view, and then we take the eyes of that other character or creature. Now, what you need to understand in terms of what Warner Brothers did wrong, what Robert Montgomery did wrong in A Lady in the Lake, is this. So you need to keep your character in the scene and on the screen. And then you can have the occasional camera point of view if your story allows it to create suspense. However, we are going to talk about a whole different type of point of view. We're going to talk about a type of point of view that is not as obvious, that's not as obtrusive, that is elegant, that is everywhere in every successful film. And I call this dramatic point of view. So dramatic point of view is not a technical technique, it's a writing technique. It has nothing to do with the way the film is ultimately realized. Now, the choices of the director may enhance this, but you as a writer determine the dramatic point of view. So it starts with having the character in the scene and on the screen, but it goes further. I'm going to show you an example where we see dramatic point of view working very beautifully. This is in The French Connection, and we watch the character played by Gene Hackman, Popeye, and here we go in his point of view. Why? Because he is obsessed. He sees something, and that turns into his overarching goal for this particular story. So this is the scene in the Copacabana Club with the music by the 3 Degrees, and we see how our character is suddenly enthralled by what's going on there. So tunnel vision, the sound falls away. This is a dramatic point of view. And it places us in the shoes of Popeye. So why is that? What do we need to do as screenwriters to achieve this? Well, I'm going to turn it around. You need to know which character your audience naturally empathizes with, or rather identifies with. Remember when we looked at Inception and the character of Ariadne, who brought us the exposition. She became the exposition character. She had the questions, and we went temporarily into her point of view, which is not advisable because you want your audience to identify with your main character. Well, here are a few points that will help us to determine which character the audience is going to identify with. First of all, and this is a technique that works for pretty much anything in writing for the screen, give that character the strongest goal. So your main character, if you want your audience to identify with that character, they need to have the strongest goal. Secondly, they need to feel the strongest emotion. So they need to feel the effects of what happens to them. And finally, they need to show the greatest transparency. What I mean by that is that they don't have any secrets. We need to know how they feel. We need to know their goals. We need to know what they know. So we need to kind of go with them as they experience the story. What this means is that if you're going to withhold information from the audience about your character, information that your character knows about, that is going to be a problem. That's going to put a barrier between your character and the audience, and that's not ideal for participation, for emotional engagement. There are films in which this happens, but usually these films are exceptions to the rule. They don't have large audiences, and if you look at the films of David Cronenberg, there are few films that have that. Just think about Existence or History of Violence. These characters have secrets that later come out, and that then distances us from that character. So here's my recommendation. First of all, I follow McKee, who says keep us with that character and keep that character in the scene so we can witness their choices and there's a greater emotional involvement. Keep them on the screen, keep showing their eyes, but think of it in terms of dramatic point of view rather than camera point of view, dramatic point of view. So we need to know and understand the goal of the character, and that needs to be the strongest goal because we naturally veer towards the character that has a strong goal. So that's it for today. I hope you learned something and hope this will be helpful in your writing. If you think so, if you think it did, then give us a like. or subscribe to the channel, even better. And I hope to see you for our next episode. Now, if there are any ideas, any topics that you want me to talk about, please put them down in the comments. And I'd also like to hear some examples of films that you like, where you saw dramatic point of view realized very successfully. Now, in future videos, quickly, I'm going to cover shifting point of view, because you can do it. It doesn't mean that you have to keep to that single point of view for the whole duration of the film. Sometimes you can go out of that point of view briefly. We'll talk about how you can create comedy and use point of view to that. We'll also talk about cheating, how you sometimes can successfully cheat point of view to achieve a goal. And I'll give you some examples that you know very well, but you may not have noticed how it was applied there. That's it for now. See you in our next video.